Welcome back to Against My Better Judgment, the podcast where two friends,
I'm Tamara Golden.
and I'm Dannelle Whiteside, tell the truth, share the lessons, and laugh about the moments that we knew better but did it anyway. Each week we share real stories about our lives, about the times that life surprised us, stretched us, or just straight up humbled us like that, right. And the lessons that we learned along the way.
And this season, we're speaking to you about how we do ships. And today we're going to talk about how we do kinship.
Yeah, which is, how we relate to family. And yeah, it's going to be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, but before we get to it, how was your week, Dannelle?
My week was good. We're back in the swing of things. We survived the snow. Last week we were snowed in. We lost power for 2 days. Yep. So we had to go stay with my mom for a couple days, and the boys were off the chain. They were excited, but then also stir crazy. So
you made snow cream?
I did not.
Okay.
No. But we did go outside like Saturday. When it snowed, we went outside and played in the snow, but then quickly it turns to ice. Yep. So after that, we didn't get to really go outside and play in it. And it was so cold. But then they had fun because my mom has a porch, a back porch. Mm-hmm. And so she let them go outside and beat the ice off the porch. And so they had so much fun with that.
The stuff you won't be able to, you have to trick them into doing when you want them to. Now they do it for fun. So.
Right. So but this week we're back in the swing of things, and so it was a good week.
No, same here. It was cold, and I literally spent 7 full days without leaving the house. So snowed in, mostly iced in.
Yeah.
I had a couple invites for friends to come and be snowed in and place with them, but it was just a great time. It's like you're always, you like the community of other folks, but also, you also like the comfort of your own home.
Yeah.
Everybody who's in your home or is everybody you want to be there, where your stuff is. So I really just kind of stayed home. I worked on a puzzle. I got a lot of things done that I otherwise couldn't, some reading, stuff like that. So it was nice, and I appreciate the offers from my two friends that invited me to come be snowed in with them. But it was a good time, and it kind of reminded me of COVID.
Yeah, that's true.
I just spent so much time by myself during COVID, and it was familiar, and it was neat to try to think of ways to survive. I was like, oh, what happens if I lose power? I mean, just thinking on all that stuff, knowing good and well, I was going to have to start that truck up if I lost power, but it was all good.
Yeah, one of the things that didn't dawn on me till the day before the snowstorm hit was we have gas, stove, fireplace.
Yep.
So I knew we'd be able to cook and everything, but I didn't think about the fact that we have a gas fireplace but an electric pilot. Mm-hmm. So it needs electricity to start the fireplace. So once our electricity went out, and the night before we had the fireplace going, and then when we went to bed, my husband was like, hey, don't forget to turn the fireplace off before you go to bed. I wish we had have kept it going, because then it would have stayed on, and then when we lost power, we would have still been okay. And I think if we had the fireplace going, we probably would have been able to still stay at our house, because we had, we were still able to cook our food and hot water and stuff like that. But,
and this is for offline, but I looked up how to start a gas fireplace with an electric pilot light. Did I send that to you?
You didn't, but I found it too. Okay. But it wasn't until after we were at my mom's house. Okay. So anyway, we learned, and we also are going to invest in a generator at some point, because I feel like with climate change and everything, you might lose your power for a number of reasons. Here, tornadoes, big storms, all that. And so we just probably need
And they're so good. I had one in my Georgia house, a whole house generator, and I only needed it once, but when I needed it once, I did not miss a beat. Yeah. It was really, really nice to not miss a beat. And then because of that, I gave my parents my smaller one.
Oh,
and
cool.
They still have it, and that's fine. So, I might invest in another one, but we'll see. All right.
Okay,
So how do you do kinship?
Yeah, well, I guess we can jump off there. Like I think for all of our listeners, you've heard me talk about when I think about my family, who's in that family. And, I guess the story of the snowstorm really highlighted the way that we do family today. In that, my mother is, I would say, the nucleus of our family. And we do a lot together. Like, she is the caregiver for my children when I'm at work. She is in case of emergency. And, she is sort of like the matriarch for me and my brother. And my brother and I are very close, and he gave me 3 wonderful nephews and a niece. And then we have my mother and father-in-law and my brother-in-law, his wife, and their daughters. And so I would describe that as like my nuclear family today. But growing up, we lived in Nashville. We did not have any family around. And so, and my dad's mom and dad lived in Memphis, and my mom's parents lived in Pine Bluff, Arkansas. So we really saw them, I guess. We would see my grandparents, my mom's parents, we would see them for homecoming because they lived in Pine Bluff where the college was that my parents went to and then I also eventually went to. So they would go back for homecoming every year. And then we would spend 1 week out of the summer we would start in Memphis. We would spend a week in Memphis with my dad's parents. And then we would spend a week in Pine Bluff with my mom's parents. And then we would come back. So we did not spend holidays together because I think I've said on this podcast before, my dad was minister of music. And so the high holidays, we had to be close for church.
Gotcha.
And so I would say growing up, we were not close to our family. Like, we were not close in proximity. And really, we weren't close now that I believe that, because the reason why I'm saying that is because I know how close I am. Like, I feel what close is to like my brother and his family and my brother-in-law and his family and my mom and my in-laws. So like, I know how close we are today. And so if I were to compare that to what we were growing up, it just is not the same.
So are you, when you think of defining kinship, what I'm hearing is there's a closeness that comes with kinship that doesn't necessarily come with a bloodline of family.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I guess at this point, how would you actually describe like that real kinship, and what makes kinship and family to you, if there's a distinction?
There is a distinction between kinship and family, because I have family. They're all over the place that we share blood. But kinship, like where you're actually in a relationship with someone who is your kin, a real relationship, I don't have that with people that are my family, except for the people that I've kind of defined.
So that nucleus that you just defined. Yeah.
And so I think which is great. Thank you for helping me to articulate that, because as we were talking before about friendship and the difference between having friends and having a friendship, I believe that the ship adds the commitment.
Okay.
So, and I do have other family members who watch this. So like, for instance, my mom's baby brother, Uncle Mark. Uncle Mark was in our lives. He would come visit. Like, I really feel like Uncle Mark made a really great effort to at least be in relationship with us, but it was still from afar. And it was still from a place of like, oh, like maybe a holiday here or there, maybe once a year, or, if we all ended up at homecoming together, like, so we saw him more than we saw other members of our family. But it was still, like I said, I'm still holding the standard as like how I operate today. And if I'm comparing how we operate today in the closest in kinship and the commitment to each other, then I didn't have that even with, like, say, Uncle Mark, you know?
Okay. And I think of it as those who, I have friends, and if we are in a friendship, I might also consider you family.
For sure.
However, the difference is the kinship has a closeness and a bloodline to it.
Yes,
that
absolutely.
is, you know, that just can't be distinguished. I mean, that's very clear and cut. So I'm just curious, like, when you think about kinship growing up, I guess, would you limit it just to your parents and your brother, or how does that look?
No. So, like, I think you will be able to share the difference in, like, how you grew up, because I think, number one, proximity hurt the kinship from developing.
That's fair.
And you have to be intentional about traveling to see someone or and spending time. And so, like, I knew, like, I would talk to my grandparents and they would call, and, you know, as they were talking to my parents, we'd be in the background, and, you know how it is. Hey, grandma. Hey, you know, so it was that kind of thing. And I really feel like I have memories of being with my grandparents on both sides, but it was so limited because of the proximity.
Let's hit on proximity. Like, let's sit there for a minute, since we have a clear difference when it comes to proximity.
Yes.
And how we kind of grow into what we have today. And totally different to your experience. I did not know either of my grandfathers at all. I know that both of my grandfathers were, one of my grandfathers was murdered, and one of my grandfathers was killed in a work accident. So I did not know
before
either.
You were born?
Yes, both before I was born. So I did not know either of my grandfathers, but I knew both of my grandmothers, and I knew them both differently, right? But to your point, my grandmothers lived in my city, a very small town. People hear me speak about Dyersburg, Tennessee all the time. So my grandmother, Emma Ruth, literally lived around the corner from us. And because I feel like the mother's parents kind of trump, that's just how it works. No matter, all the mothers out there, you know how it works. It's just a rule. Mother's parents trump. So we would be dropped off the bus a lot of times at my mom's house, who we called Mama, and our Mama. So we'd be dropped off there at the bus. And if we spent the night anywhere, which was very rare, we would stay at her house. But I didn't really have a clear memory of spending the entire night. I have a memory of spending the night and my parents coming to get us and bring us home. We may be, I'll fake sleep just so I can get to the car. So my grandmother lived in Dyersburg, and my mom's mother. So when your mom's family trumps, I have a closer relationship with my mom's brothers. So my mom has two brothers, and one of them lived with us. I mean, we got so many quarters from my Uncle Daryl that it was not funny. I mean, to watch wrestling and stuff like that, we get quarters. So he stayed with us because, again, none of my dad's brother ever stayed with us. My mom's, it just trumps. That's just how it goes. And so my mom has two brothers. One of them has, I think, 6 kids. One of them doesn't have any kids. Then my dad's family, my grandmother, she lived, literally, they all live less than a mile from us. So there were 13 of my dad's siblings, and they all lived in Dyersburg. And we were one of the smallest families of only having 2 kids.
Okay.
So you can imagine how that proximity played, because we saw them all the time. And my dad, because they lived so close, I saw my grandmother every single week. My father's mother, who was Ann Galden, I saw her every single week.
Yeah.
So that proximity played into kinship. As a child, I actually had kinship. And to your point, the proximity piece, that was a big benefit but also the presence of whoever you declare as the primary matriarch of the family was also part of kinship. And we'll get into that later, but I just wanted to hit on.
Yeah. So that gives you the great contrast. Like you have someone who grew up and she saw everybody all the time, and I saw them 3 times a year. So it affected our relationships with everybody, because it's not just like you described. If everybody's kind of operating around the matriarch, then you get to not only just know the matriarch, but you know her siblings and you know their kids, and so I just didn't really have that. And then my dad was the only child. I misspoke. He had 2 half brothers, but one of them was much older and the other one lived in the same town, but again, still not the town we lived in. So like we would only see them when we would go there, which was infrequent. So, it just, and how that has translated into my adulthood is just like, I have as strong a relationship with them as I have anybody else I see on Facebook.
Wow, gotcha.
Like it's like, and again, I'm sort of doing a generality. Like they're cousins that, I might check in with every now and then, or like I might go to their graduations. But like, if you ask me day to day, like what's so-and-so up to, I really can't tell you.
And see, I think that's interesting because even today, I'm not kidding you. I probably have 500 cousins.
13 times 13 times 13,
correct.
That's a lot.
So here's the interesting thing. While I had a different type of kinship, I'll say until I left to go to college, my kinship now is totally different too, because my mom just started getting close with her more extended family. Like she has cousins that she calls sisters, right? I think about my cousin Brenda. She's like a sister to my mom. But my mom has started being more open to different friendships and relationships and more of an intimacy with her relatives, to where I'm starting to get there. But at this point, a lot of my cousins are like I'd speak to someone on Facebook. Like it's a difference. Growing up, we were tight. I mean, we saw each other. So that proximity point, then we started to not only move apart physically, we start to move apart just in our paradigms and our ideologies. So that's kind of neat. But you said something earlier about your mother being kind of the nucleus, the matriarch of the family. How do you think that, because my matriarch is going to be a different matriarch. So how does that play into your kinship today and how you see it for your boys?
Well, it kind of, I think, mirrors how you grew up. If I'm thinking about how my boys are growing up now, it kind of mirrors how you grew up. Because my mom was literally, if I got in my car and went to her house, it would take me 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
Okay. Since we timed it.
Yeah, like literally during COVID, we would walk to their house just to get out the house. And we could walk. And she picks them up 3 days a week. When the older 2 were not school aged, she kept both of them until they were school aged.
Okay.
And then she picks them up 3 days a week, takes them to their activities. And like, she's very much like me if I'm not here.
Okay.
Like they are very into her. And the same, like, she remarried after my father passed away. And her husband is their grandfather, basically.
He's the coolest dude.
He
is cool.
He is. We call him Papa J.
Okay, Papa J.
Papa J. So, that's their grandfather. That's the only grandfather that they've known, aside from my in-laws. But like, what I'm saying? Yeah. So, and then, so even in functionality though, she kind of holds a trump card. So like, if I've decided, like when we decided to change Shannon's school, that's not an independent decision. That's like,
it's like, am I still doing pickup?
Let me ask my mama if she's okay with, she's very much like, she's going to tell us her opinion about how they're raised and how, what inputs, are, I don't like that friend over there. She's going to tell us as the matriarch, and there are times where I appreciate that. Like most of the time I do appreciate that because most of the time she is a very wise counsel and a good sounding board. But then there are other times when I'm like, I haven't even been able to formulate my own opinion before you telling me yours. And sometimes I'm like, pump your brakes. But it's kinship. It's a relationship. It is, we learn how to relate in this ecosystem of family that we have. And I'd rather have it than not. And then and it's the same with my brother, she's really the matriarch of their family, even though they don't even live here anymore. She's still very much, on the phone and, keeping tabs on everybody. And, when they got the flu, make sure you take this, she's just
get that elderberry.
Yeah. And so, and I think it's okay to have that anchor, where you can go to get your memories and where you can go to learn, why do I behave this way? Or how, can you color what happened in the past? Those sorts of things. I respect that.
Yeah. And I think also it helps I think what I've learned in hearing from you, so I know I'm kind of jumping the gun, but, I'm learning that you can also relearn kinship because what you've explained is a kinship that you have now that I had. And I say that had intentionally because it's not my kinship of today. You would think, oh, wow, it's not my kinship of today. And I think about in my grandmother's funeral in 2017, rest in peace. She died July 25th, 2017. And I remember someone who did the eulogy. He said, when you lose a matriarch like this, he held a fist. And he said, either you'll come together as a family and you'll be closer and tighter, and he opened his hand really wide, or you'll spread apart and you would everybody will go their own direction. And I thought I wasn't listening to him, but I was clearly. And so unfortunately, at least from my perspective, he nailed it. I would have never thought that the Gaudens, as strong as a family, would have spread apart like a starfish. So that's interesting when when the core is missing, because a matriarch is nothing more than, we're going to talk about leadership later. It's the leader of the family.
That's true.
And I will say we definitely spread apart in that way. And my kinship really is very narrow. It's narrow to my parents, period, point blank, and a very few, aunts and uncles that I've maintained a relationship with. And frankly, some aunts and uncles that aren't even, they would have been married to not even blood, so that's it's very interesting to think about kinship and what that means and how special it is. And what I've learned from you is maybe we can relearn it. Maybe if we all can shake off, it's what I think about being in a small town is when you're in a small town, everybody talks about how you're so different from them or how you act different or you talk different. And it's kind of like, okay, if you think all of these things, then why are you in my face? Right. And then when you move away, they talk about how you moved away, you won't come back, you won't. Well, it's kind of different. It's like when I was there, you didn't have anything positive to say. Yeah. And when I leave and I totally don't give you the energy and the space in my brain, you want to why am I still part of your conversation? So it's interesting because I wonder, to your point, the effort. I personally haven't put forth the effort in kinship. And who can become the matriarch? And I'm not saying by any means take my grandmother's place. No, but who can become the matriarch? And do I think it's worth it? Or can I be that person? Or do I want to? But it has me thinking.
Yeah. And I think when it comes to matriarch, it's the person that kind of steps up to take interest in everybody and how, how they're doing. And so I certainly see that. And I also see that because of the way that families have evolved over time, when we were an agricultural society, people had 13 kids because they needed to have people to help them run this farm.
Correct.
Now the nuclear family is 4 people on average.
Oh, if that.
Right. And so I think what matriarchy or even patriarchy is looking like, before it looked like a clan and now it's just looking like a little cluster. And so you really need to commit to your cluster. And I think that's what happens when you kind of describe this spreading out. Now, instead of this one family with 500 people, you've got 5 with 5, you know, and so commit to your cluster, because I think that we are families. God created families, you know, obviously, like this is how we come here. It's important to have families imprint on you so that you know who you are, and then you're able to sort of match, like, okay, how am I in relationship to other people? And so it's not healthy for you to be out there by yourself.
Agree.
And so even if you have, like, you and your parents are really close, commit to that cluster, which you have. You know, like me, I've committed to that cluster. Like, I'm involved with my nieces, my nephews and niece. I'm really involved with my mom and with my brother, and with, you know, like, I've committed to my cluster.
I like that.
And I think moving forward, as families change, like, just commit to that.
Yeah. And then you grow your cluster, but you got to be committed to something.
Yeah.
So I love it. This has been a great conversation, and there are just things I can really reflect on. So thank you for your insight.
I appreciate every single member of my family, and I love them whether we are close or far. Like, one of my cousins came to town a few months ago, and she and my mom are first cousins, and we were able to talk about just like how she grew up and how I grew up, and I just never understood. Like, I never knew all the challenges that she faced as a person. And then so we just kind of said, well, hey, let's, you know, like, we were apart just because of proximity, but also because of how her parents were and how mine were. So, like, let's just commit to checking in. Yeah. You know, so you can always reestablish connections and recommit in a new way.
I love it.
Yeah. I have one question though. Do you have family reunions?
Yes. We have family reunions. We were rotating them like every other year with one side of the family, and then just whenever with the other side of the family. In fact, there's a picture that we're staring at right now. That's the fruit. It's the shirts were the few, the proud, the Galdens. That's the last family reunion we had in 2016, where that's a picture of my grandmother and myself, where she was alive and she ended up dying in 2016. So we were more rigid about it, and something has happened, like over the last COVID happened. Yeah. We have not had a family reunion since COVID. So maybe, no commitment here, but maybe it's time for me to maybe step it up.
Yeah, it takes commitment. I will say, unpopular opinion.
It's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work. Unpopular opinion, I don't like family reunions.
That's a whole nother subject. We've got to get on to our next section. No. I feel like if I'm only going to see you one time a year, like, what's the point? But, like, I really want a relationship with you. You got to start with a reunion. But anyway, geez.
So we're going to move on to will be the judge segment.
Oh, yeah.
Where we give our qualified yet unqualified opinion.
Definitely unqualified.
And so this one, it comes from Shelby. Shelby says, hi, Tamara and Dannelle. Every year, like clockwork, the moment we set the clocks back, I lose all motivation. I'm tired, irritable, constantly craving carbs, and one sad commercial away from crying. I finally Googled it, and yep, it's probably seasonal affective disorder. I haven't officially been diagnosed, but I know my body is telling me. What I don't know is how to keep showing up at work for my family and for myself when I feel like a blanket with legs. So here's my question. How do y'all get through the dark months without falling apart or falling asleep at your desk?
Okay. First, Shelby, I'll just say that, Shelby, we fell back like a few months ago. So, but anyway,
but it's still dark.
That's true. It's still dark.
But anyway, dark early.
But Shelby, so I have not been diagnosed with seasonal affect disorder, but I have diagnosed myself with it. I get incredibly blue during the fallback months, and I attribute it primarily to the lack of sun. So first, I guess the first thing I'll say is identify what it is that you're missing. Is it because your network is more active in the summer and spring, those months? if that's the case, my answer is going to be different for you. But for me, mine is solely related to the sun. So what I do is religiously, I don't care if it's gloomy outside. It does not matter to me. I open up my blinds. I open up the blinds in my house. I open up the blinds in my office, in my sitting room. The rooms that I'm primarily in, my blinds are always open during the day. The other thing I do typically is I use daylight bulbs. So daylight bulbs in my office, not so much like if it's a permanent light, I've not replaced it for daylight bulbs, but I use daylight bulbs. And I am very aware. So when it's time for me to make a decision, I really have to check how I really feel. And then I have to process, like, is this really how I feel? Or is this really just something that's going on in the universe and the world? So I'm very slow to make brash decisions if I'm feeling gloomy, because I don't know if it's me being totally, the lack of sun, the lack of daylight, or if I'm really making a correct decision. So I tend to take longer to make a big decision, especially if it's a negative decision. It's kind of like, Dannelle's acting some kind of way. I'm done talking to her. Like, if it's a very brash decision, I usually wait, and I also bounce it off of a trusted friend that is also aware of how those fallback months, how I operate.
Waiting on you to give an example of Dannelle, your trusted friend.
Trust me, I wouldn't. But Dannelle is my trusted friend. So I usually bounce it off someone else before I just go all in. So, but you have to acknowledge it, and sounds like you have, and then figure out what it is about your situation, because a lot of my world, they do tend to slow down. A lot of my the friends that I interact with, they do tend to slow down in the winter months, primarily if they're in academia, the kids are back at school, they're back at work. So if that was my issue, my response would be totally different. Have to be more intentional about inviting people over or going to their houses or reworking my schedule. So
yeah. It's not something, I will say, I don't think I really deal with it much, except for in March, because by March I am fed up with wintertime and I want it to be over. And I remember one time when I lived in Philadelphia that it was March and it was snowing, and I just cried because I was like, winter is never letting go of us. So I was just done with it. It was gloomy. I was tired. So I would just say, as the people are saying today, as the popular saying is, go touch grass. What Tamara said is true. Let the light in. When you can, go out there, ground yourself. Sometimes I'll just take my shoes off and go just stand in the grass a little bit. And
they have grounding mats now also. Do they call them grounding pads or grounding mats?
I don't.
One or the other. Look it up.
Maybe try it. So, and then in these months, you really have to be intentional about finding joy. So, if it is, going to an indoor trampoline park and jumping up and down and, just trying to be intentional about radical joy, because sometimes when you get into this place of being depressed, you just have to do something that's going to interrupt that, because the day in, day out routine can be exhausting still. And so you have to trick yourself into okay, let me just shake that off by doing something radical.
And I think that's a huge point, radical joy. Shelby, I learned now I don't wait for people anymore. If I ask somebody if they want to do something, if they pause, hem and haw, fine, let me know, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. If I say, hey, do you want to do this with me? If you say, yeah, and I don't hear anything, I'm going to go ahead and buy my ticket.
Yeah.
I have learned to just start. I do a lot of things by myself, and I have a great, great time. And it's rarely I'm the only person there whenever I'm doing these things. So, hey, I'm running a pop stroke here next weekend.
Are you?
Join me, Shelby.
I want to go.
I've never been.
Me either.
So, anywho.
Okay, well, thank you, Shelby. And it's February, so you just got hang on just a little while longer.
Hang on.
And the sun is going to shine again. And that's a word for everybody in life.
That's true.
So, we're going to move on to the Against My Better Judgment segment. And so, Tamara, what did you do against your better judgment?
Yeah, this is actually a short one. And that is, I said yes to something without checking my calendar, which is just not characteristic of me. And I knew it wasn't characteristic of me when I said yes to this. So I was asked to be a speaker on a panel, and it felt like something I could not say no to anyway. And I was like, oh, yes, I'm in. For sure, I can do it. Didn't even look at my calendar. Lo and behold, of all times, it's a time when I was going to visit one of my dear friends that's, let's just say, been through it. And me and another one of our friends, we were meeting to go visit this particular friend. And so it ended up just costing me unnecessary money. So I had to change my flight. And because it's less than a week out, it cost me more to change the flight. And then I had to change the lodging. And at this point in time, the people wouldn't give me a full refund on the lodging. So I felt like I had to eat that because it's my so I say that to say, against my better judgment, there's certain routines and habits that I have. And a lot of folks, they don't necessarily criticize me, but a lot of folks speak to my habits, and they can use words like OCD or what have you, which I am not OCD. I'm very particular, but I'm just not OCD. But a lot of the habits I have are there for a reason. So identify your habits that keep you organized. And so that, and one thing, when you think about the book of, there's a book that's like about character traits or it's not the 4 habits, but
4 agreements.
4 agreements. And one of them is be impeccable with your word. Impeccable with your word. And so I'm one of those people that if I say something to you or tell you something, it's going to happen. It's not about not being flexible. It's not about not being spontaneous. If I tell you something, it's going to happen because I do pride myself in being impeccable with my word. And so because I told this group that I would be a part of their panel, it cost me. And it cost me.
Yeah.
And so I always say, be impeccable with your word and stick to those habits that allow you to be who you are. So,
yeah, man, I have notoriously double booked myself. And it's stressful because then you have to switch some things around. Somebody's going to get disappointed. And so, check your list twice.
Check, baby. No, that is so true.
Okay. So what are we taking away from this conversation?
I think a lot of things. First of all, kinship matters. And I use the word be committed to your cluster. I love that. I thought that was a really good way to look at it. Be committed to your cluster. And if you want kinship, put forth the effort towards kinship, which means you're gonna have to let some things go that happened in the past. Yeah.
And I would say that when it comes to kinship, no matter what your upbringing is, it's not, especially when you have children, it's not too late you're curating their life. And for me, it's important that they have a solid foundation of kinship, so they know who they are and they know that they're loved. And so it's not too late to change, the mode and method that you've been operating in to get back close to your cluster. So
I love it.
Yep. So anyway, thank you guys for tuning in. And please, if you have a question or comment, if you want us to give you our opinion about something, send us a message either on Gmail at againstmybetterjudgment@gmail.com or on Facebook and Instagram at Against My Better Judgment Pod.
Yeah. And as always, y'all, please like us, give us 5 stars, and we'll see you. We'll see you next week.
Yep. Thank you. Bye.